Star Wars Echoes, Legacy of Maul. "The Queen is secure, Master," Darth Maul breathed, his voice coarse, vibrating with a lethal, rhythmic edge. "I shall return her to Naboo immediately." The hologram of Darth Sidious loomed large over the cockpit, the blue light catching the hint of a smile on his lips. The satisfaction from beneath his hood was almost palpable. "You have done well, my apprentice." Sidious paused, the image wavering as he tilted his head. "And yet, I sense something more to your encounter. A complication." Darth Maul's hand tightened against the hilt on his belt. An image of two Jedi, shattered against the waists, burned through his mind. The Master had fallen first, his pious serenity breaking like a thin sheet of ice under the weight of a sudden, undeniable truth. The Padawan had followed, fierce and passionate. He would have made a promising acolyte, but he too had perished by Maul's hand. The others had been a mere formality, a slaughter no more challenging than culling nerfs in a pen. The Queen's captain, the pilot, the handmaidens, all had thrown down their lives in service to their beloved monarch. The alien clown had died blubbering. Even the droid had been reduced to slag. But there was another. "No, Master," Maul lied, the word feeling like lead on his tongue. "There was nothing. The Queen's guardians are gone. There are no survivors." Sidious watched him for a heartbeat longer than necessary, his silence a whetted blade. "I see," he said. "Then proceed with your mission, Lord Maul. We shall speak again when your task is done." The hologram faded into a spark of static, plunging the cockpit of the scimitar into a suffocating, blood-red glow. The silence of the dune sea surged back in, broken only by the rhythmic, mechanical whine of the ship's standby systems. A sharp chirp echoed from the command console. The last of the probe droids had returned. Maul took the controls, wondering if he had just secured his master's victory or planted the very first seeds of rebellion. The heavy hatch hissed shut, sealing the cargo bay door. The air was cold, sharp with the metallic tang of the scimitar's life support system. Maul moved through the gloom with the predatory grace of a loth wolf. To his left, his personal speeder, the Bloodfin, stood clamped against the bulkhead, its sleek frame still echoing the heat of Tatooine's twin suns. Stacks of supplies, rations, spare parts, and clothing loomed like jagged monoliths in the shadows. In the center of the bay, the darkness was punctured by a vertical shaft of shimmering light. The holding cell. Maul stopped at the edge of the glow, his yellow eyes fixing on the slumped figure within. Queen Amidala looked nothing like the porcelain icon on the holonet. Dressed in the rough linens of a desert peasant, she was a smudge of gray against the clinical light. The decoy had been a masterful stroke of deception, one that might have fooled a lesser hunter. But the Queen's own heart had betrayed her in the end. She had watched her handmaidens fall, her guards slaughtered like livestock, and the Jedi cut down in the sand. When the blade had turned toward the last of her retinue, the monarch had broken. She had cast aside the mask of the peasant and thrown herself before Maul's boots, offering her life for those already lost. He had killed them anyway, and he'd made her watch before claiming her with a sedative dart. She stirred. The drug was a thick, viscous fog in her veins, but the Sith's presence was a cold needle to her senses. Her head lifted, her hair matted with grit, her gaze trembling as it met his golden eyes. "You should sleep now, Highness," Maul hissed, his hand hovering over the cell controls. "You'll find this prison much kinder than the waking world." Something stirred in the shadows. A small, dirt-streaked blur lunged from behind a stack of crates. It swung a heavy, rusted Hydra spanner with both hands, the metal whistling through the air before it collided with Maul's shoulder. The impact ricocheted harmlessly off the Sith Lord's corded muscle, vibrating back into the attacker's small arms with a bone-jarring rattle. The boy didn't stop. He dropped the tool and threw himself at the Dark Lord, his small, clenched fists drumming a frantic, useless rhythm against Maul's heavy robes.
You killed them!"
the boy wailed, his voice cracking into a raw, jagged sob.
"You killed them all!"
Tears carved pale rivers through the grit on his face. Maul did not reach for his saber. He didn't have to. With a flick of his wrist, he sent the boy spiraling across the deck, coming to rest against the cold Durasteel floor. The boy lay there for a moment, gasping, his eyes red-raw and puffy, staring up at the Sith with a look of pure, unadulterated loathing. Maul stood motionless, looking down at the wretched creature. His face remained a mask of indifference, but a splinter of curiosity began to dig into his mind. The Jedi had been a known variable. The Queen was a political necessity, but this thing was out of place. A rat from the wastes of Tatooine, found amongst the finery of a royal starship. He wore the coarse, sweat-stained rags of a slave, yet he had the protection of the Republic's most elite guardians. Maul reached out with his senses, testing the air around the boy. He expected the stench of fear, the bitterness of grief, and they were there, thick and suffocating. But beneath them was something else. A hum. A resonance in the force that felt like the gathering of a storm. What was it doing here? What purpose did the Jedi have for this boy? "I want to go home." The voice was small, stripped of the fire it had held a few moments earlier. It was the sound of a spirit collapsing under the weight of a vacuum. "I want my mom," the boy whispered to the Durasteel floor. "Please, just take me back to my mom." Maul's head tilted slightly. The words carried a concept of attachment the Sith had long ago cauterized from his soul. He felt a flicker of irritation. The storm evaporated, replaced by this weeping pile of rags. "There is no home, boy," Maul hissed, his voice a low, vibrating rasp that seemed to crawl across the floor. "Home is a delusion of the weak, a place to hide from the truth of the galaxy." The boy looked up, his face a map of misery. "You're a monster." "I am reality," Maul countered. He stepped away from the holding cell, his boots making no sound. "The Jedi took you from your home, did they not? They saw what you were and what you might become. They promised you freedom." They said I'd be a Jedi," the boy whispered. The words were a plea for the universe to make sense again. He had left his mother for a dream of starlight and heroism, only to end in another prison, soaked in the blood of his friends. Maul didn't sneer this time. He looked at the boy with a terrifying, clinical stillness. "The Jedi are weak," Maul said. It wasn't an insult, it was a statement of fact, as cold as the vacuum of space. "You are weak," Maul continued, his voice dropping to a low, vibrating rasp. "Not because you are small, not because you are a slave. You are weak because you hope. You expect the galaxy to be fair. You think that because you are good, the dark will not find you." Maul knelt. It wasn't an act of submission, but the way a predator lowers itself to look into the burrow of its prey. He reached out, his gloved fingers closing around the boy's trembling wrist. He squeezed just enough to feel the frantic, bird-like pulse. "The Jedi would tell you to let go of your anger. They would tell you that pain is an illusion." Maul leaned in, the scent of sulfur and old blood clinging to his robes. "They lie. The pain is the only thing that is real. It is the only thing that stays when the lights go out." He released the boy's wrist, leaving a faint red mark on the pale skin. "You want freedom?" Maul asked, a dark, twisted mirth flickering in his yellow eyes. "This is it. No mother to hold you, no master to guide you, no Jedi to lie to you. Just you, the dark, and the strength you find when you realize that no one is coming to save you." 9 months later. The sky over Dathomir bruised. A heavy, suffocating canopy of crimson mist hung low over the obsidian crags, trapping the scent of sulfur, rotting swamp flora, and old blood. Up here, on the jagged plateaus of the Nightbrother territory, the wind howled like a dying beast, biting into bare, scarred skin. The boy who was once Anakin Skywalker stood in the center of a makeshift ring of jagged stone, his lungs burning. 4 days. 4 days without a scrap of food, a drop of water, or a single wink of sleep. His tongue felt like a piece of dry leather in his mouth, and his vision swam, the red landscape blurring into a dizzying vortex. His muscles didn't just ache. They vibrated with a deep, systemic exhaustion that threatened to buckle his knees at any second. Across from him stood 2 Nightbrothers. They were towering, muscle-bound Zabraks, their skin patterned with sharp, black tattoos, their horns glinting in the dim, filtered sunlight. They held heavy, ironwood quarterstaffs, their eyes locked onto the frail human interloper. With a guttural roar, the first brother lunged. Anakin raised his training blade, a heavy, unbladed bar of durasteel, to parry. The impact rattled up his arms, vibrating through his hollow chest. He spun to avoid the second brother's sweeping strike, but his footing failed him. His boots slipped on the moss-covered stone. He lost his balance, tumbling hard against the sharp gravel of the arena floor. Again, the voice drifted down from a high, overlooking ledge. Darth Maul sat there, a shadow carved against the red fog, his arms crossed over his chest. His posture was perfectly still, his expression a mask of absolute apathy. Anakin pushed himself up, his breath coming in ragged, pathetic gasps. Before he could fully steady his stance, the Zabraks moved in again. A heavy staff cracked violently against Anakin's left shin. The bone groaned under the impact, and a sharp, blinding white pain shot up his leg. He cried out, dropping to one knee, the durasteel bar clattering against the rock. Again, Maul commanded, his tone dropping a fraction, colder this time. Anakin forced himself back to his feet, his left leg trembling violently. His heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The brothers didn't give him time to breathe. A staff caught him squarely in the ribs, sending him crashing back down into the dirt. Again, he crawled for his weapon. A heavy boot stamped down on his hand, grinding his fingers into the gravel. Again. The word became a rhythmic, maddening drumbeat, echoing off the obsidian walls. It was the only sound in the galaxy. Again. 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 He was a slave. He was nothing. Just a piece of meat to be beaten, broken, and shaped by hands that did not care if he lived or died. Again. In the suffocating quiet of his own exhaustion, something shifted. A vacuum opened in the center of his chest, and the darkness rushed in to fill it. The deep, stagnant well of the dark side that saturated Dathomir's soil seemed to rise up through the soles of his boots, flooding his veins with a sudden, intoxicating heat. Images flashed behind his eyes, sharp and agonizingly clear. He saw his mother, her face lined with sorrow, shrinking into the distance. He saw the shimmering, golden future of a Jedi Knight, a future of heroism and starlight, shatter like glass. He saw Padme Amidala, her clothes stained with the blood of her handmaidens, her eyes hollowed out by terror. And then, behind all of it, he saw the architect. He looked up, past the 2 Zabraks, straight to the ledge above. He saw Maul's face, the monster who had dragged him from the light, who had starved him, beaten him, and stripped away every piece of humanity he possessed. The grief burned away, leaving only a white-hot, incandescent rage. The air in the arena grew instantly cold. The loose pebbles around Anakin's boots began to rattle, lifting off the ground, defying gravity. The Night Brothers froze, their predatory arrogance instantly replaced by a primal, instinctual terror as the Force rippled out from the boy like a physical blow. With a scream ripped from the very depths of his soul, Anakin exploded upward. He didn't use the training blade. He threw his hand outward, and a concussive blast of raw power slammed into the first Zabrak, throwing the massive warrior clear across the arena and shattering his spine against the rock face. The second brother swung his staff in a panic, but Anakin caught the ironwood weapon barehanded. With a sickening crunch, he snapped the shaft and drove his elbow into the Zabrak's throat, sending him crashing to the floor. The violence stopped as abruptly as it had begun. Anakin stood entirely alone amidst the wreckage of his adversaries, his chest heaving as he drew the heavy, sulfurous air deep into his burning lungs. His gaze remained fixed entirely on the high ledge. Maul's lips peeled back, his face twisting into a macabre expression of satisfaction.